So now that we've taken care of some of the very basics of Excel, the environment, what cells are, columns, basic calculation, we're going to move on with a case. The case is of a real company, and you're going to hear the story about the evolution of a problem within this company and several solutions, but we're going to do it using Excel. And there will be data, there will be numbers and words. We'll think it through, what the best scenarios are, what the problems might be. But the thing is, when we move forward with Excel using the numbers and the functions within Excel, we end up learning about various aspects of Excel, which is the key. So remember, in this course, you are to learn Excel and how to use it and how to leverage it for a business purpose, in your case, in HR. The story that we're going to wrap it around is simply an add-on. It gives you a visual of a real company, real people, real scenarios. And I think you'll really enjoy the story. It's about a company that we're going to call Centra Inc. The real company is not Centra Inc., but I think you'll enjoy the story because it will allow you to experience Excel and learn various aspects of it in a real light. So remember, Excel, the single most important tool, a very important skill on your resume, is not one big thing. It's not like you have to know all of it or none of it. It's little things, things that you keep adding to it so that when you use them in combination at some point, it becomes something real, something useful, something that will make your administrative life a lot easier and give you the analytics capability that you need to do strategic work in HR. So I'm going to start off by telling you about the company. I think it's very important to understand the context, the environment, the background framework within which we're doing things in Excel versus just going right into Excel and showing you how to do things. I think that would be somewhat meaningless. So we're going to explore the company, pay attention because there's a lot of things that are subjective and objective in nature that will impact what we do. So Centra Inc. is a company located in a small town, so somewhere in Ontario in Canada. Now the small town, if you've never been to a small town, and I know many of you are from smaller places, it's not a city. It's not a big city. There's not much traffic. There aren't that many people. It will be under 15,000 people in that town. And you have to understand that in smaller spaces that are distanced from big metropolis cities, people might be different. They might think differently. They operate in a society within a society. Their attitudes, their perceptions, their motivations, the way they think, the way they consume things, and their attitude towards materialism and money might be different than what you think. And I believe a lot of textbooks do present material from a big city point of view, let's just say, not necessarily from a smaller space point of view. So Centra Inc. is located in a small town, and it is owned by one gentleman. He's an older gentleman. He has two children who are very successful on their own. One's a lawyer, one's an engineer. They live far away. They're not much interested in this company. Now, this gentleman who owns the company started it 40 some odd years ago, 45 years ago. He built it up. He's very proud of it. But here's the thing. He's not interested in money as much as you would think. I mean, he's made a lot of money. He's not greedy. He doesn't know what to do with it. But he cares for his people very much. And by people, that would be his employees. Okay, so there's a little under 100 employees who work for this company. And he deeply, deeply cares for them. So the owner, he's very much a family man. He's a religious man. He's devoted to his community, and he completely likes his product. He's so proud of his product that the company's producing. It's his legacy. It's his thing. Now, he recognizes that other people have ideas, but everything needs to go through him. He has to approve things, which, with all due respect, it's his company. The company was based on his ideas, his vision, his culture. So corporate culture, that we have to respect his wishes as well. And he just might know a thing or two that we don't, right? So keep that in mind. Now, the company operates in one factory. It doesn't look like that. It's more of a flat building that has 60 tables. And the table is about a little bit longer. Imagine a dining table, a large dining table. And each employee who is making the product works at one table. And each employee, when they start one unit of the product, they start and finish the entire unit themselves. And at the somewhere inside this unit, they have to sign their names, like in a secret location. And that's one of the things that customers like about it. It was touched by one person. It was handmade, made in Canada, high quality craftsmanship. Now, what do these people make? Well, first of all, let me tell you who they are. The employees are master crafts people. It took them 6 to 8 years of working for less money, learning as an apprentice under a master crafts person, and then they became master crafts people themselves, and they're earning pretty good money. We'll see those numbers in a minute. Now, they're very good at what they do. They know what they're doing. They don't all work at the same pace, but there are 60 of them. So 60 tables in this factory, right? Now, I should tell you that if one of these people were to leave, it's very difficult in the short term to replace this employee, because in Canada, at least, there are no young people who want to enter into this trade. It's like a lot of other trades, like farming, for example, that younger people just don't want to get into it in large numbers. Sure, you can train somebody, but it would take 6 to 8 years to apprentice. We can even shorten that to about 2 to 3 years, but that's not a short-term solution. So keep that in mind. Now, what do these people produce? They produce high-end, expensive, custom cases. Now, I know you see briefcases and luggage there. It's not necessarily meant for you and I. It's not luggage. It's not like that. They make the odd briefcase for executives and so on. Their products leave the factory for thousands of dollars, $2,000 to $8,000. Now, they make cases for very highly specialized purposes. To store expensive equipment, for security purposes. The cases are made out of very expensive Corinthian leather, titanium, gold gilding, platinum, you name it. But they're very high-end cases that they're making, and they're very popular around the world for people who would buy them. So let's get into the data, because you know the story now, at least the start of it. We're going to evolve that story as we go. But really, a story backed up by numbers, by data, means a whole lot more. So we're going to go into Excel, and we're going to revisit some of the basics we did last session, but we're going to start fresh with a whole new set of functionality within Excel. So have a look. So if you remember from the last session, we did some basics in Excel to explain to you what a cell is, what a column is, what a row is. For example, this would be column D, row 4, and this cell would be D4. Okay. We also did a date up here, an automatic date, and I'll just do it quickly to remind you. The function, which starts with an equal sign, the name of the function was NOW. We opened a bracket, Shift 9. We closed the bracket, Shift 0. You press Enter. Now, by the way, just a reminder, if you ever get hashtags, don't panic. It means that whatever's in that cell now is too big to fit. So you go up at the top between the two columns, click your mouse and just stretch it over, you see? Or you can double click really fast. Sometimes that happens, so don't ever worry about the hashtags. It just means make the column bigger. Now, this date and time we got, what we did is right-clicked, went to Format Cells, chose the date format, and within the date format, we chose this, which is medium date. Click OK. There we go. And I'm just going to make the column go a little bit smaller. So that was the basics. And last session, we then calculated some weekly pay and annual pay and so on. We're going to move on with that. From that, I should say. Now have a look. I'm going to just change the font color here, because I already typed in some of the data. But this company has 60 employees, I told you. 58 actually, but let's say 60. I'm only going to put 5 names up there, okay? Because what you can do for 5, you can do for 60 easily, right? Or 6,000. Now, normally you would have an employee ID number in one column. You would have the last name, comma, space, first name. That's fine. I think you get that. But here we have 5 employees. Now, I'm going to pop up more data. There we go. This is the amount of money that each employee earned in 2019. Now, I should disclose to you that for this spreadsheet, I am putting down 2019, 2021, just so it looks current. But the actual story that I'm telling happened way earlier on in 2002, 2003. Okay, just if you want to know. But in 2019, this is the amount of money that each employee was promised. It's a salary. Now, to earn that money, they had to produce units. And the number of units, successful units that were produced were these. Okay, so rather than typing in the numbers, I've already typed them in for you. Okay, you would normally type them in. But the units are successful in that any rejects, any amount of rejects or damages that were sustained were already deducted from here. So right away, we can make some decisions, okay? And we'll just quickly play this game again. If you had to fire somebody just based on an irrational piece of information like a name or the way a person looks or they talk or whatever, you would just pick somebody, and I think you would pick Buffy. Why a different name? If I asked you to fire somebody based on their pay, now you can get away with that, become somewhat legitimate. High-costing people should be let go. They shouldn't be, but if you're trying to save money, you could. You have to pay out. If you don't want to get sued, you do have to pay out, termination, severance, whatever you call it. But look at this, Sam versus Sally. It's a very small difference between the two. So you have to justify why Sam and not Sally. Now, if I ask you to terminate somebody based on this number, that becomes very legitimate. You can terminate people for lack of productivity. It's called incompetence, right? For example, if your company needed output of 1,400 units from everybody, and we gave you a chance, we gave Pat a chance to improve that, and Pat didn't, we could let Pat go. Sure, there's some payouts we have to pay, but we could. Don't, because it's hard to replace that person, right? Now, we're going to do one calculation, and it's a ratio, and it's called 2019 PPU. Because you're probably saying, why terminate based on cost? Why terminate based on production alone? Why not calculate how much each unit of production costs? And that's what PPU is. Pay per unit. Pay per unit. It's called a ratio, and we like our ratios in HR. It allows us to take two numbers, do something to it, divide it, so we're left with just one number, and that one number is so easy to compare amongst thousands of people. Now, I'm going to show you a little trick. See, you didn't know what PPU was. And when you use this spreadsheet and you send it to other people in different offices, they might not know, and they might have to call you to find out what it is. So in Excel, you can tell them automatically what something is. So you click in a cell, PPU, right-click, and you go to Insert Comment. And when you go there, you can just delete your name. And I'm going to write pay per unit, and I'll even say adjusted for rejects. So any information you like, you can put in there, and that was also covered in the last session, right? There we go. Now let's calculate it. What is PPU? The word per always means to divide. Okay, so pay per unit, units per hour, rejects per day. Something per something is something divided by something. We start with an equal sign. And in this case, it would be the pay, which is B5, divided by C5. So B5 divided by C5, and the forward slash is your divide button, okay? So pay divided by units. Press enter. The answer is 44. Now, you should know how to copy down from the last session, so I'll copy this down. And you know what? Let's format it. See the dollar sign at the top? There we go. So this is the PPU. It's the first calculation we're doing here. Now, based on this, let's fire somebody. Remember, the idea is how much did each person's pay cost to produce one unit? Now, this is what we call an LIC, a labor input cost. Now, input costs are costs that go into each product that is produced, each unit. So in addition to labor, which in North America might be the largest amount, right? It's expensive. We have raw material costs. We have overhead costs. For example, the leather, the titanium costs a lot of money. So in this case, Sam is the highest PPU. Sam costs me more per unit than anybody else. So we can terminate Sam. But it's not just the number that we're worried about today. Look at the next highest one. It's Joe at $44. Now, what's the difference between Joe and Sam? It's 44 cents. That's 1%. Statistically very insignificant difference. So I wouldn't just fire Sam. That's a lazy way to do things, right? I would investigate both Joe and Sam. I'll give you an example. If Sam or Samantha, female, legally defined, if Samantha's machine kept breaking down more than Joe, it's not Samantha's fault. Of course the number goes up. If Samantha was legitimately ill for medical reasons, or let's say was going to have a baby, was on pregnancy, maternity leave, or was about to go, and for that reason she was slowed down a little bit, yeah, it's not Sam's fault. If Sam was called into more meetings, it's not Sam's fault. So that little bit of a nuance, a little difference, needs to be investigated. Now while we're here, I'm just going to fix these numbers. These are just units, so we're going to use the comma. And don't forget, hashtags means the column's too big. We don't need decimals, so make the decimal 0. Okay, so please practice your formatting. These are dollars, pay, so we'll put the dollar sign, and again, 0 decimals, okay? How do you know how many decimals? You use your judgment. In my case, though, look at how I'm doing it. So we went through various scenarios to decide how to fire people. I mean, we're all over the place, right? Let me just get rid of those yellow marks. So now, problem statement. What happened was, it is now August of 2019. And these employees' boss is the production manager. And they also have some maintenance people working for them to, fix the machines and so on. Right next to the production manager's office was the sales manager's office. And the sales manager has 2 sales associates to sell the product. And next to them was the HR coordinator. And the HR coordinator had one employee, was the HR assistant who did some of the payroll, or all of it, I should say. So one day in late August, the sales manager went to the production manager's office and started, complaining and yelling. And the problem was that the production people were not producing enough units, right? This is what they were producing. And the salespeople were turning down customers who wanted more and more. So a salesperson, you know what salespeople do. They sell. They have to maintain relationships with customers. They don't like to say no to a customer. They want to sell. Whether it's for money or not doesn't matter. So the yelling and screaming went on into the late afternoon, and HR actually got tired of it and went over to the production manager's office, said, okay, guys, can you keep it down? Can you keep the voice down? Is there anything I could help with? Now, many departments in many companies don't really understand truly what HR can bring to the table. They think HR is very much an administrative function. So they said, no, this is a production issue. We don't need you. So HR sits down, no problem, in her own office. But then the next day it started up again, even louder. More bad words are being used. So HR then demanded to find out what's going on and said, maybe we can help. So they explained that the amount of production isn't keeping up with sales. And the production manager goes, look around, we have 60 people, the factory is full. What do you want me to do? We can't produce more. So HR says, wait, you're talking about those people, the employees? Those are my people, right? Maybe I can help. Maybe we can do something with these employees to make them produce more. So they did try ideas, and all through September and part of October, they did come up with ideas. They came up with 2 sets of ideas. Some were not HR ideas, and some were HR ideas. And I'm going to share some of these with you. I know in our class session, I asked you the question, and you came up with some great ideas. But remember, at the end of the day, even if the idea is good, viable, doable, the owner still has the final say, and we have to respect that. So there were ideas from the team, such as why don't we offshore the production or outsource, which means have somebody else in another factory somewhere in the world manufacture for us. Somebody else suggested, why don't we automate the place? So the offshore business, the owner was told and says, look, it's not a bad business idea. Maybe in the future we will. But right now the product is handmade in Canada. It's going to stay in Canada. We're not going to outsource it. That's just the way it is. Now the automation, that conversation started, and they even costed it out at $800,000 just to get started. So they do like maybe a quarter of the factory. For $800,000 investment, they can put machines, automated machines that can do some of the work faster, because employees by hand can only do so much. So let me explain the process here. There was no automated machine. There was very little electricity being used. The leather was being cut by hand with big scissors. The metal was being cut by hand. The stitching happened with the machine that you turn by hand with the big needle. Perfect stitching, by the way. The gilding was happening by hand by little hammer. Gilding is when you put expensive metals on top of something else with the hammer. The polishing, the buffing, all was being done by hand. Now you could have easily put in an automatic cutter, maybe a stamping machine, a computer-aided machine. You could have put an automatic stitching machine, conveyors to go move the product back and forth so a person doesn't have to walk. You could do all that, and the calculations are done, and you could have realized efficiencies of upwards of 22% by doing that. And the owner says, look, I don't mind spending the money. It'll cost several $1,000,000 to do the whole factory. I don't mind spending it. Maybe in the future when I no longer own the company, but today it is handmade, and each unit is made by one person. I want that person to take pride in that unit, not the machine. In fact, the only automated machine in the whole factory was the Coca-Cola machine in the cafeteria. So, good idea, but no. So then HR comes up with some ideas. Why don't we hire more people? Well, no problem, except the fact is I told you there are no new people willing to do the job. And it wasn't necessarily because of the job. It is a very satisfying job. But I think anybody in this class, except maybe one or two of you, if I showed you the job, you might enjoy it for a week or two, but I don't think you'll be sustained in it. You won't be doing it forever. Therein lies the problem. Part of it might be because it's a smaller town. There's not much there. I mean, if you look at the town, it's like 4 streets, one main street. There's some little shopping. There's really no big mall. There's no mall, actually. The nearest town is about an hour and 20 minutes away. It's a bigger town. Movie theater, yeah, there's a small one. Only shows movies once a month. There's like a restaurant and a half, more like a cafe. So maybe it doesn't attract people to live in that space. People are there. They love it. It's great. They enjoy it. But in any case, you can't hire more people. So then another idea was brought forward. Why don't we use the same people we've got and do some overtime? The O word starts with an O. Overtime. Make people or ask people to work an extra hour, hour and a half, 2 hours every day. We pay them more, but we can realize upwards of 13% improvement in productivity if we did that. So the owner hears, he goes, no. Right? He had a system. At exactly 6 o'clock, he would close the main door. And he's the last one out of the factory. He goes, by the time I get home, my employees are already at home with their families ready to get dinner. So he says, no overtime. Somebody even said, why don't we double the size of the factory? At the back, there's land. Owner goes, no, that's my vegetable garden. Leave it alone. And even if you did, you doubled the size of the factory, put 60 more stations to make the product, where are you going to get the people to be at those stations, right? Complications. So training was suggested. Why don't we train the employees to be different? And you know what? Training is tricky that way. You can only train people if you believe the root cause of why they do what they do was that they didn't know what they were doing. Training corrects when people don't know what they're doing, or it untrains bad behavior, trains good behavior. These employees, it was discovered, already were efficient. They knew what they were doing at their level. Now, if you look and you see that Sally is working at 1,600 and Pat is working at 1,200, and over the years it was generally that level, you're probably saying, but why can't I train Pat to be like Sally? Well, you could try putting Sally together with Pat in a coaching, mentoring scenario where Pat learns a bit about Sally's work habits. But end of the day, Sally is going to produce what Sally does, and Pat will produce what Pat does. See, you have to understand human behavior in this context. We can, in the short term, make people do something differently, but it's not long term. Humans, up to a certain age, develop an ability, a natural tendency to do something. And we're not all the same. I believe it's about the early 20s. In your early 20s, you establish yourself and your capacity to work. Now, it's like a rubber band or an elastic band, okay? Up to that early 20s age, we can stretch it, we can mold it, it becomes a certain shape. Past that point, when you stretch that elastic band, you can temporarily stretch it. If you let go, it always goes back to its original state. I mean, why are you not exactly the same as me? Or, sometimes somebody, when you're younger, says, why can't you be more like your brother or your sister? Because you're not your brother or sister. Everybody's different. Why can't everybody in this class get 99%? Why not? Well, you can technically, but you won't. Either because some of you don't care about the marks, thank you. Some of you have other priorities, other things, distractions, family, children. You're taking 6 courses. I could force you, I could probably give you enough incentive right now, or threats, to force you to get your grade higher by 10%. But that's not sustainable. Humans have a natural tendency. And we're going to discuss that more towards the end of the course. That's a big part of what HR is, understanding the capacity of humans to work. And Hertzberg, a gentleman by the name of Hertzberg, you learn more in your OB course, had a theory. It was called the expectancy theory. And it suggests that people exert an amount of effort, meaning work, based on a perceived reward that they might get out of it, whatever that reward is. It could be money or not money, monetary, non-monetary. But maybe if that's not broken, if people do work the way they do and that is where it is, then maybe that's not what you need to fix. And in this case, training was only going to confuse the situation, not help. So see, all sorts of ideas went back and forth, back and forth. And one day, in pretty much, I think, mid-October of 2019, the HR person just said, look, you know what? We are too much part of this game. We're part of the culture. We don't have the fresh ideas. We need new, fresh thinking. And they did something really smart. They hired a group of consultants with the one lead consultant. And they were from the big city, Toronto. Okay, keep that in mind. And the consultants came in, and the idea was that they would bring in fresh ideas, an impartial view, not biased in any way. And in fact, they did. So the consultants were smart. What they did is they said, before we even start consulting and coming up with ideas, we need to be part of this community, the society within. So they worked, they did the various jobs, they lived in the community, they ate with people, they lived with families, they looked around, they shopped, dressed the same way. They immersed themselves in that community experience to understand the people. But then they also understood the job. They did studies, they measured people, they had stopwatches, they would see how fast people can work, different types of people, different genders, different ages, different physiques. And they collected the data. And then they said, look, this is what we found. We found that over the years, 10s, 20, 30 years, you've been paying generously. This is pretty good money to pay for the job. And people's attitude towards that money is not the same everywhere. There's not many places to spend money in that town, nor do people want to. People there don't want a Mercedes-Benz because their neighbor has a Bentley. They're happy. Their families are important. Education's important. Food is important. You see, so people got very comfortable with that level of money. Not complacent, comfortable. And their natural tendency to produce the way they did, because year after year, that's just the way it is. It becomes systemic. So the way you're going to get people to produce more, there's only one way, and it was kind of risky, consultants said, is to change the way they earn. The whole exchange process. What do you get in return for doing what? And how do you perceive that? The expectancy. Right? Expectancy theory. And here's what they did. Okay, so let's go backwards a bit. They said that we're going to introduce, and I'll just highlight a few headings for you here, different way of getting paid. We are actually going to get rid of this salary on January 1, 2020, which is next year, let's say. We're going to get rid of this salary. And we're going to replace it with a brand new way of paying, but we're also going to qualify almost everybody for a bonus. You're almost guaranteed it. And fewer people for bonus too, and even a super bonus. It's a whole new scheme of how you can earn. So they fed all of this data, scenarios, what could be, to a bunch of math people that they hired. So consultants hired a couple of people that were math experts, okay? And these math experts, they said, okay, based on everything you've told us and the data that we have, we are going to predict, okay, let me pop these numbers up, look. We're going to predict that next year, this is how many units will be produced. Now you're probably saying, how do you predict what will happen next year based on just a bunch of words and a few numbers? Well, the magic of math. Up to that point, I had no appreciation for it. I mean, you know, I like math. You have to have math everywhere if you go shopping and such. But these math people actually did some magic. Like I can even go backwards and tell you that after the first year, those numbers are so accurate, almost dead on. I have a brand new appreciation for what math people can do. There's magic in there, okay? You don't need to be that math person, you see? You hired them. But you need to be the thinker to say, this is the changes I want to make. What do you think will happen? So let's move on, okay? Today we're going to do pay, bonus 1, bonus 2. We're going to do up to there. Super bonus, we'll leave it till later. Now here's the pay. Ready? 2020 pay is a base of $25,000 plus $12 for each 2020 unit produced. Now you have to read it a bit, okay? It's a policy statement. Hundreds of scenarios were done. And the original proposal would have looked something like a $7,000 to $8,000 base pay. Now, what a base pay is a guaranteed amount you get. Right? No matter how much you produce. It's like sales, commission. Doesn't matter what the commission is, you always get some sort of base. Or many cases. So in this case, what happened was a $7,000 to $8,000 was proposed, but the owner said no. Be more generous. I want my families to have a guaranteed minimum amount of $25,000 so that their children, their families have the same reasonable quality of life. Then they can earn more. And then the number of $12 for each unit produced was reasonable to keep the money in line. So, I mean, you know, I get it. We're selling a case for thousands of dollars and we're only giving an employee $12. Yeah, but you don't want to increase the pays to like $200,000 either. You have to keep it reasonable, right? There's other costs associated with manufacturing. So let's do this, okay? This is the first of our serious calculations. Look, equal sign, right? To do a calculation, we're going to give the employee $25,000. Done. Wait, no, there's more. Plus. Plus what? I'm going to give you for each unit produced $12. Just read that. $12 for each. For each means times. $12 times 2020 units. So E5 times 12. Now you could go backwards. You can do 12 times E5. Doesn't matter, okay? going to give you $25,000 plus 12 times each unit. Good. Let's copy down. Make it dollars. Now let's see where we're at. Let's play a game called Who's Happy and Who's Going to Sue Me. Joe went from 55,000 to 41. Lawsuit. Or not happy. Pat, not happy. Sam, very unhappy. Buffy. Oh, way to go, Buffy. You are happy. Sally, unhappy. But that's okay. That's just the start. Employees are not going to sue you. They're not going to, the lawsuit, by the way, would be called a constructive dismissal because you fundamentally altered your contract. But remember, we're going to give our employees more. We're going to give them bonuses too. So bonus 1 is, now I'm going to give you back a big chunk of the money I took away. Get this, $10,000. Oh yeah, I'm going to give you $10,000. But based on what? How do you get the $10,000? You don't. If you give it to everybody, that's pay. That's not a bonus. So my criteria is if your 2020 units, remember that's what we're trying to get, right? Is 1350 or more. Now, see that number 1350? I'm giving that number to you. That number is called a benchmark or a standard. Calculations were done, and it was determined that the minimum number of units anybody should have is 1350. The minimum. Meaning going forward, we would ideally remove anybody who had less than 1350 units, like Pat. Or train them, or do whatever the heck to get them up to 1350. Mitigate. But that's the minimum that we need. And as long as you get me the minimum, you will get $10,000. So whether you get me 2,000 units or 1,350, you'll get the same $10,000. So it's not necessarily a fair thing, but it's a start. Remember, we're just giving back the money, okay? So let's have a look. Let's look at Joe. Is Joe's units 1350 or more? Greater than or equal to 1350? Yes. So we put 10,000. Is Pat? No. Sam? Yes. Buffy? Yes. Sally? Yes. You see what I did? I simply looked at this number and asked, is it greater than or equal to 1350? Yes. Put 10,000. No, don't. Of course you're not going to do that, right? 5 people, no problem. What if I give you 5,000 employees? So Excel does have a function that will do that for you. And it looks almost the way you speak to Excel. Watch. Starts with an equal sign. The function is called if. Now every function, after a word, you have to put a bracket. Remember that. And you close the bracket at the end. Now in this case, I'm going to say, hey Excel, if this number, right, the units, is greater than or equal to 1350. Now, if you're not sure about greater than, less than, not equal to, there's a little write-up in the basic Excel guide. You can have a look, okay? They're called Boolean operators. Comma. Stare at that for a second. I'm simply asking Excel to check something, a rule, a criteria, a condition. Excel, if E5, 2020 units, is greater than or equal to 1350, then it's true. Then give me something. Give you what? 10,000. Else, here's the cool part. If the number is not greater than or equal to 1350, guess what? It's the opposite. It's not. It's false. Then what do we put? If you don't get 10,000, you get what? A lot of people would say 0. But I'm not going to do that, okay? I mean, you've learned a bit about the culture of the company, the owner, the very generous person. You don't want, at the end of the year at the Christmas or holiday party, for some people to get up, shake the hand of the president, get an envelope with $10,000. But you see Pat there? Pat doesn't get up because Pat's going to get nothing. It is so embarrassing, so highly demotivating to be singled out as such. It's human nature. So why not give Pat a little something? So people who don't get the big bonus, because their units are not greater than or equal to 1350, give them a little taste, a tickle, a flavor of what they could have got, 500. So at least everybody gets up, gets an envelope, and Pat is not demotivated, not humiliated, not embarrassed. And that maybe in their mind they say, you know what, I want to be part of this group. Maybe next year, what can I do? What can I do to get there? And HR will step in, intercept and say, Pat, throughout this year, this is what we're going to do, okay? This is how we're going to think, and this is how we're going to work. Let's press enter, copy it down, and double check a few numbers, right? Make sure they're good. Yep, 10, 5, yep, that's good. So the unfair thing about this, like I said, is doesn't matter how much harder you work, it's the same $10,000. So if I told you in this class that I will give anybody who gets more than 50% or 50% or more, 50% is a passing mark. If you get 50% or more, I will give you $100. Now, whether you got 51 or 95 in the course, you get the same $100. Now, I'm not going to suggest that after a year or 2 years, the person getting 95 is going to say, wait, I only need to do 51 to get the same money. You're not going to drop down to 51. Your work ethic won't allow you. But you might go down to about 80. You see a little bit down. That's Hertzberg's expectancy theory. Meaning you won't work as hard as you used to. So we're going to actually fix that a little bit, and we're going to do a bonus too. This one is more progressive. It's fairer. It's what we call gain share. Meaning if you gain for me, like if I gain from your work, I make more, I will share some of it with you, okay? So bonus 2 is $75 for each 2020 unit produced in excess of. Now, in excess of means more than. So now what we have to do is say, okay, let's raise the benchmark a little bit. 1350 was minimum. Let's go a little higher. Make you work a little bit better. Not much. And I'll give you $75 for each unit above there. And the benchmark the consultant set, which was reasonable and doable, can't be too high or too low, was 1,400 units. Okay? 50 more units. So, for every unit more than 1,400, you get $75, okay? So if your production was 1,401 unit, you were 1 unit more than 1,400. So 1 times 75, I owe you $75. In the case of Sam's units were 1,500. They were 100 units more than 1,400. So 100 times 75 is $7,500. Here, I'll do that one for you. Units minus 1,400. That will get you the difference, right? See, the answer is 100. But this number, you want to multiply by 75. Okay? So whatever answer this is, the difference, how many units more than 1,400, multiply that by 75. And you're going to get a weird answer. As soon as you get a weird answer, just know what you did is wrong, right? By the way, I'm double clicking in the cell to get back in, okay? Or you can go click on it and go up here to edit. So have a look. You know that the computer is going to do 1,400 times 75 first. We covered BEDMAS, order of operations, last week. If you are still not familiar with it, please look at the tutorial. I put it under week 2. But computer is going to do 1,400 times 75 because multiply happens first, and minus that from E7. That just doesn't mean anything. But you want this to happen first. So know that you have to put brackets around it because brackets happen first. So what's inside a bracket always happens first. So now your answer is 7,500. See? That is the bonus. Work at it. That's on your list of homework. If you can get this formula, you're good to go. If you don't learn any more math for HR, we're safe for now. You can always hire people who can get the additional math, but I think this is a basis for a lot of other calculations you can do, just the thought of it, okay? Now here's the problem. You can't do it this way because Sam and Buffy and Sally produced more than 1,400 units, but Joe and Pat did not. So you can't use the same calculation, okay? So you have to ask yourself, how does Excel check to see who gets a bonus? And I'll only do that calculation for people who get a bonus. Who gets a bonus? Bonus 2. Only people whose units are more than 1,400. Everyone else is a 0. So have a look. We're going to use another if statement. If this number is greater than, actually not even equal to, just greater than 1,400. Now you could put the equal sign if you want, but remember, if it's exactly 1,400, what's 1,400 minus 1,400? 0. What's 0 times 75? 0. So you don't need the equal sign. So only people whose units are more than 1,400 get the bonus, comma, right? Comma. If this is true, if the number is greater than 1,400, then give me this calculation. Give me this. E5 minus 1,400 times $75. The same thing we did before, okay? Now notice I have brackets inside brackets. That's okay. Make sure you close it, right? You're allowed about 121 sets of brackets. That's a lot. So let's read this. If your units are greater than 1,400, yes, then give me this amount of money. If not, then give me 0. Right? I'm not going to give you another taste of money. I already gave it to you. So it's a 0. Now, I don't want you to get concerned. Oh my God, that's too big. I don't get it. Sure, things get bigger. It does look bigger. Yes. But then don't be confused by it. I'm not using math notations and those weird math symbols. Even I get confused with those. But look at it piece by piece. Draw it on a piece of paper and say, okay, what is this? That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm checking. How do I know? It tells me right there. What's this? This is calculating the number of units in excess of 1,400 or above 1,400. And whatever that answer is, I multiply by 75. This is my bonus. And the rest just says, this is what everybody else is getting. So this is your homework. I want you to work on this one. This is an important one. First one should be a 0. Copy it down. And again, just double check a couple of numbers to make sure that they're okay. Yep, 0, 0. Yep, good. It works. By the way, that's the most complex calculation we will do for the next couple of weeks. If you can get that one, you're on your way to get a ton more. Now, what's the total pay? Be careful. Just think, what is it? It's 2020 total pay. What am I paying? I am paying you the pay plus bonus 1 plus bonus 2. Now, even though there is no bonus 2 for Joe included anyways, right? If I had a column there for benefits, you would include it. For vacation, you would include it. And that's the new amount. Now, I want to show relative change. I mean, some people are happy, some are unhappy. But by what percentage did your pay change? Like, if I just said, look, you got a $10,000 pay increase, that's okay, you're excited. But if you were making $1 million, $10,000 is not that much. If you were making $50,000, $10,000 is a lot, right? So we calculate this thing called percent change, which is a change from one period to another, today versus yesterday, this year versus last year, this quarter versus last quarter. Any two periods of time where there's a new number and there's an old number, you can calculate percent change. Now I'm just going to type it here for you what it looks like. You can almost memorize it because it'll never change. Look, we do the difference between the new and the old pay, and you divide by the old pay. Let's plug it in. And I think you know why we need brackets. This is the new pay. And by the way, that's I5, not 15. Minus the old pay. That will tell you how much your pay changed. But if you divide it by the old pay, it'll convert it to a percentage. Ready? Look at this. Sometimes Excel tricks you. The answer you're looking for is either decimals or a percentage. And a lot of people say, my answer's wrong, I'm getting a 0. You're only getting a 0 because you're not showing decimal places. And the answer's not dollars, it is percents. So click the percent button at the top and let's go at 1 decimal. Copy it down. You see, now you can see relative change in pay. Joe is unhappy. Pat is very unhappy. Sam is okay. Buffy is very happy. And Sally's neutral. By the way, Pat is not going to quit or sue us, okay? It's okay, leave it. Don't worry. So, we did an if statement. We did another if statement. And there's a third version of an if statement, which we're going to do next session. It's called super bonus. Now, super bonus has a really elaborate story behind it that brings in all sorts of subjective ideas, concepts, and objective. So objective are things that are right in front of you. They're provable. They're measurable. Subjective are more organic. They're more things that are maybe abstract, I should say. Or here, I'll give you an example. I could tell you the bonus is $1 million. That's objective. I could tell you it's based on percent change. But the subjective side of things we need to take into account are things like corporate culture, attitude towards money, emotions, sense of society, sense of belonging, sense of celebrity. Abraham Maslow's pyramid, hierarchy of human needs, things within that. So when you use the number and you look at the subjective elements that influence that number, then you get a tremendous understanding of how we can do some really great things in HR. Lack of understanding of those other elements means you're just making policy based on what? I don't know. Okay, so next session we're going to do that. We're also then going to do a lot of plug and plays down here to help you manage more data. We're even going to go to another sheet at the bottom. And we're going to do some scenarios for the future, and then we'll end up with the VLOOKUP. Okay, so we got another 2 sessions of Excel. But right now already, you know enough Excel to really do quite well. There's just a few more extra things I need to show you. So please practice. This worksheet is posted under the specific week, week 3. It's called Excel 2 class file. Either start it from scratch, try to redo all of these things, the functions and the calculations, the formula, or just look at it and say, yes, I can redo this, yes, I can redo this. And the way I think is if I put this away for 24 hours, can I go back and redo all of this in under 1 hour? The answer is yes, good. If not, find out what you need to work on. Okay, we'll see you in the next session.